guys, it's Jessica and I'm back again with another video. And for today's video, I'm going to be doing a medical school advice video. So I'm just going to be giving some advice on, like, if you want to go to medical school, then I'm going to be giving you some advice on how you can get accepted and how you can do well in medical school when you're up there. And I'm also going to be answering some questions that people ask me on my Instagram as well. So if you were one of the people that asked me a question, then you might see your question answered in this video. Okay, so first I'm just going to be starting off with like some general advice. Okay, so if you're in high school and you want to go to medical school or become a doctor or whatever, I highly recommend that you attend Xavier University of Louisiana. It's in New Orleans, and I feel like that university really prepared me for medical school, like 100%. Like, I feel like if I had gone anywhere else, I wouldn't have been as prepared for medical school. So Xavier is #1 in getting African Americans accepted into medical school, and I'm African American and I wanted to go to medical school, so guess where I went. Like, medical school has been like review for me. Like, a lot of the stuff is like really familiar. I've learned it before, like at Xavier in these classes, and so it just makes learning a lot of like the new stuff that I haven't really learned yet. It makes that easier, and I don't have to like study the old stuff because I've already learned it. So I can just put more of my attention on the new material. And yeah, I've been doing pretty well in medical school. So next I'm just going to describe like what a general week in my life looks like in medical school. So on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays I have class from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. But then on Tuesdays and Thursdays, those are like half days, and I go to class from 8 to 12. So basically 8 a.m. it usually starts off with lectures. Like, we'll usually probably have like 4 lectures that morning. They're all 50 minutes, and in the afternoons we'll do like we do this class called Intro to Clinical Medicine, and that's basically just like when you're learning actual like doctor stuff, like how to be a doctor, like how to take blood pressure, where to listen for the heart sounds, stuff like that. So I really love the afternoons a lot. Also in the afternoons you may have like a lab, like histology lab or anatomy lab. And so histology is just like the study of tissue. So like when you're looking at something under the microscope, except we don't use microscopes at my medical school. It's just like pictures like on our iPads. So at my medical school there's 104 students in our class, and we have 26 cadavers. So it's like 4 people to a table of cadavers. And if you don't know what a cadaver is, it's basically a dead body that was like embalmed, and so it's like preserved and stuff, and you basically dissect the body, and then you have to identify everything inside of it, like nerves, blood vessels, and it's pretty complicated. Like, I really did not realize how many muscles and bones and nerves and blood vessels are in the body until like you cut it open and you're like, oh my god, I have to learn all of this. Like, it's a lot of material. And then so not only do you have to know how to identify it on that body, but you also have to know how to identify it on 26 other bodies as well. So it's kind of just like everything looks really different. So basically for the lab exams, you basically go into the room and it's like all 26 of cadavers. So at each table with the body there's like 2 questions, and so you just basically rotate around. You have 2 minutes per table, which I feel like is a pretty good amount of time. So basically like they'll tag like the trapezius or something, and so then you have to know how to identify it. So for the first part of the question they might ask, identify this structure. So first you have to know what it is. Like, okay, it's a muscle, it's in the back, it's in this area, so it's probably the trapezius muscle. So for the part B question they might ask like, what innervates this muscle, or they might ask like, what actions would be affected if the nerve that innervates this muscle was damaged or something like that. And so first you have to know, okay, what nerve innervates this? It's the accessory nerve. So what does that do? It innervates the trapezius, and the trapezius, the action is to elevate, retract, and rotate the scapula. So that person wouldn't be able to like rotate their scapula. And so it's kind of like you have to just work your way through it. Like, it's not going to be like, it's not like simple questions. So at 5 p.m. when I'm finished, I'll usually like start immediately studying. Like, I don't even take a break, and I'll study from about 5 to maybe 11, maybe 11:30, even midnight sometimes. And on the Tuesdays and Thursdays when I have a half day, I also start studying immediately when I get out. So I study from 12. But then on those days, since I have more time to study, I don't really go till like midnight. I might study till like 9 o'clock, which, I mean, that's still a lot of studying. But like, medical school is completely different from undergrad. Like, when I was in undergrad, I don't think I studied at all until probably finals week. And so like when I got to medical school and then realized like you literally have to study every single day for like 8 hours a day basically, like it just like I guess it just kind of caught me off guard a little bit, which I knew I was going to have to study a lot in medical school. Like it's really like probably the hardest thing I've ever done in my entire life, but I just really didn't think it was going to be this much studying. Like I really don't even have a life anymore. So Fridays is technically like my day off from studying, which I put that in quotation marks because it's not really a day off. Like for one, I go to class from 8 to 5, so that's not a day off. And then I also still study on Fridays, but I only study till about 8. So I study for about 3 hours on Friday. So that's what my day off is, like when I study for 3 hours and go to class from 8 to 5. So on Saturdays and Sundays, I like to sleep in because I'm really not a morning person. So I actually don't start studying until about 12 o'clock on Saturdays and Sundays, but I go till about 8 or 9 p.m. So I study for about 9 hours a day on the weekends. And yeah, it's a lot of studying. But if you plan on attending medical school, just realize that it's completely different from undergrad. You may have graduated valedictorian, top of your class in undergrad, and you're going to get around people that are just like everybody was basically top of their class in medical school. Like they all come from like Ivy Leagues and stuff like that. And so it can be like really intimidating, like especially for me being like a black woman in medical school, and then everyone's like, I guess like white, I guess, you know what I mean? And it's just kind of like, I feel like everybody here kind of underestimates me just because of the stereotype that black people get into medical school easily, which is totally not true. Like if anything, I feel like I've had to work harder. Yeah, sometimes like I just feel like some people here don't think I'm like as smart as them or whatever, and especially because they come from like Ivy Leagues and maybe like, I don't know, maybe they think they're better than me or whatever, which I don't really care. Like I don't really care about what other people think, but it just kind of like at the beginning it was kind of having me thinking like maybe I'm not good enough to be here, like maybe I am dumber than them. And then I took the exams. I've taken 8 exams since I've been here, and I've scored above the average on all of them, like literally. And so I'm just like, clearly I'm doing something right. It's not like I'm below the average. Like I'm obviously meant to be here. And so that's one thing that I guess I just really had to teach myself, is that like I'm meant to be here. Like I'm here for a reason. I'm not dumber than everybody else. But yeah, so I just think it's really important, like for one, to not compare yourself to other people. Don't care about what other people think about you, because yeah, like you're probably doing something right. So now I'm going to get, I guess, into like the questions that people ask me on my Instagram, and I'm going to be answering them. Okay, so the first question is, any advice for someone currently in a pre-med program getting ready for medical school? Just make sure that you're learning in undergrad, like focus really hard on the classes, like your biology and your chemistry, physics, all of that, because it's going to come back later. So don't just try to get an A in undergrad. You actually need to know this material. Like it's going to keep coming back. Like when you get to medical school, they're going to assume that you've already taken physics and biochemistry and all of that, and so they're not going to like reteach it to you. So you actually really need to know it. That's another thing about medical school. Like it does not slow down or stop for anybody. Like if you fail an exam, or if you're behind on the reading, it's not going to slow down. Like they're just going to keep going. That's why one thing, I guess like one of my biggest advice is, in medical school, if you're not ahead, you're behind. Like you literally have to know the next day's material the day before. And if you're not learning that, if you're not reading ahead, like if you're not reading ahead like over the lectures, you're going to be behind. And so I highly recommend reading ahead, because like the reinforcement when you're in lecture is really good, because it's like, oh yeah, I remember reading about that last night. Like it's easier to remember the material. So I really recommend reading ahead. And so that's what I mean when I say if you're not ahead, you're behind, because like when you try to learn it in lecture the next day, it's like a whole bunch of information. And so if you don't read it ahead, it's just going to be like you're just going to be like, wow. Like, so on medical school, depending on where you go, you'll most likely be taking like 4 of these main classes. So you'll be taking histology, anatomy, physiology, and embryology. That's how it is at my medical school. Some medical schools are different. Like I know a lot of medical schools, like they'll also teach you like genetics and stuff, which we do a little bit of genetics, but it's not really a lot of genetics. Okay, so in college, a lot of people just focus on the grade, and it's like the grade really, like, okay, your grades do matter because you need good grades to get accepted into medical school, but at the end of the day, you actually have to learn this material. So it's like, people that cheat their whole way through, like, one day that's really going to come back to bite you. Or if you don't actually learn the material, but you're just like focused on getting your A, like, oh, okay, I only need to know this for the exam, so I'm going to just learn that. If you're like just like learning, I guess, for an A in the class, but not learning to actually know the material, then you're not going to do well in medical school or in any profession that you choose to do, because you actually have to know this material. Like, your grades really do not matter that much. Like, it's not just about the grade, it's about, did you learn something? Like, are you going to remember this? And especially when you get to medical school, where it's like, these are people's lives. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you can't just like cheat your way through medical school, because if you end up killing a patient one day, then it's like, obviously, like, that's not good. Like, you really want to make sure that you're learning this material to learn it and like remember it, than just like saying, okay, I just need to know this for my exam, so I'm just gonna know this. Like, you know what I mean? Okay, so the next question is, how does a long distance relationship work when you're both busy? And I'm personally not in a relationship. I haven't been in a relationship since 2014, so that was like 4 years ago, and I really don't know a lot about relationships. But yeah, that relationship was like 2 months long, and I'm honestly probably not the best person to get relationship advice from. But I just personally feel like it can work if you're two people that are both busy, like maybe you're in med school or law school or whatever, and you're like both like really busy and stuff. It can work, but I just feel like you have to be really understanding that that person has like a lot of stuff going on. They have a lot of reading and studying to do, and it's not always easy to just text somebody from good morning all the way to good night. You know what I mean? Like, text all throughout the day and stuff like that. Like, you really won't have time to do that, especially like texting and lecturing and stuff. Like, you really won't have time to be on your phone like that. So I feel like communication is also really important as well. Like, it's important to tell somebody, hey, I'm about to start studying, so I'm going to put my phone on airplane mode or whatever. You know, like, don't just like ignore them. Like, don't have them wondering, like, why haven't they texted me, you know? But like I said, I'm not the best person to get relationship advice from, if we're being honest, but that's my advice. So the next question is, did your first class sound like gibberish, or was it material you were already familiar with? So I guess that's kind of something I've already answered as well. Like, I personally feel like a lot of it sounds very familiar. Like, there's some things where it's like completely new to me. Like, I'm just like, what is this? And like, there's other things where it's like, oh yeah, I remember learning about that at Xavier. And so it's like all like obviously you're gonna forget things, like you can't remember everything, but I personally didn't feel like my first class sounded like gibberish at all. Like, I was honestly already really familiar with the material. I felt really prepared, and I did really well in the exam, so no, I don't think so at all. And so the next thing is, how different are the classes from undergrad classes? So to put it in perspective, those classes like anatomy and physiology and stuff like that, they're like a whole semester long class, so about like 16 weeks, I think. The amount of material that I learned in one semester at Xavier was literally my first 3 weeks of medical school. Like, I'm not even kidding at all. Like, it moves really fast. Like, it's very fast paced. The lectures are very, very dense and stuff, and you have to get very in detail to know like every single detail about everything in the human body and stuff. And so that's clearly a lot. Like, it's incredibly dense. That's all the questions and all the advice that I have. I really hope that this video helped you, and if it did, make sure that you subscribe to my channel if you aren't already, and give this video a thumbs up.